Mark chapter 6 verses 35 to 44. When the day was now far spent, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and already the hour is late. Send them away, that they may go into the surrounding country and villages, and buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat." But he answered and said to them, "You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Shall we go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give them something to eat?" But he said to them, "How many loaves do you have? Go and see." And when they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then he commanded them to make them all sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in ranks, in hundreds and in 50s. And when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, blessed and broke the loaves, and gave them to his disciples to set before them. And the 2 fish he divided among them all. So they all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of fragments and of the fish. Now those who had eaten the loaves were about 5,000 men. Jesus' teaching was not brief. In fact, he spent almost the whole day instructing the crowd. How many of us could survive if we had to listen for hours without any break for meals? Late in the afternoon, just before sunset, the disciples interrupted Jesus. They suggested that he send the people away to eat. What else could they have done instead of interrupting him in this way? Perhaps they could have waited or asked his opinion instead of making a suggestion. I imagine they were irritated, since they had gone to that location for a much-needed break. Instead, they had to continue working without even a chance to eat. Jesus' response to their suggestion, shocking them. You give them something to eat. They had tried to bring the long day to a close, but instead Jesus gave them more work. Feeding 5,000 men and many more women and children. Incredulous, they told him it would take more than $30,000 to feed so many people. Jesus asked them, "How many loaves of bread do you have?" Scanning the crowd, they found a boy with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, a meal that was a bit too big for a small boy. It was a lunch box made by a generous mother intent on teaching her child to share. Jesus ordered his disciples to arrange the people in groups of 50 and 100. Then taking the boy's lunchbox, he looked up to heaven and prayed to the Father. As a Jew, it was Jesus' custom to pray before meals. But instead of looking at the bread and fish, he looked up to heaven. He was not dependent on the lunchbox, but on the Father who was the owner of the universe. Where do we look when we pray? Do we look up or down? The Bible does not describe how the bread and fish were multiplied. Only the disciples saw how it was done. They distributed the food to the groups of people. What thoughts filled the disciples' minds as they observed the miracle taking place, and as they handed out the food? Jesus had compassion on the crowd because they were like sheep without a shepherd. That's why he began to teach them. After feeding them spiritually, the good shepherd fed them physically too. No one was left out. There were even 12 baskets of leftovers. The miracle of feeding thousands of people, it provides good lesson to those who cannot think beyond their own limits, who cannot plan beyond their own abilities. I choose to look up to heaven. I choose not to look down at what I have or what I can do.